What the hell is this?
He fainted.
Dead away.
Actually, he hit his head.
Yeah, it was like fainting. Knocked out.
Hit his head on what?
Of the floor.
Ceiling.
Which one?
Above.
Neither.
What the hell happened?
The Foster family kept trying to convince their son Brantley not to leave their cozy little nest and stay with them until the very end. But to their disappointment, the guy was burning with a strong desire to move to New York, where he believed he'd find himself a beautiful, attractive girl, and after making a lot of money, buy a penthouse. So, with those hopes in mind, he leaves his hometown and ends up on the streets of New York, where the hottest girls weren't shy about throwing flirty looks at such a handsome guy. Only instead of a penthouse, he eventually found himself in a real dump, where he had to smash roaches with an actual iron. Everything started not the way he expected. The company he got hired into remotely suddenly announced layoffs, and he was among those cut.
I was counting on this job. I mean, what do I do now? Punt!
And at another place, they demanded practical experience, since no one considered the time he spent in college to be real studying or real experience. Everything he went through there, in the business world, is basically considered a joke.
You're perfect for the job.
Great.
Except
No. No exceptions. I want this job. I need it. I can do it. Everywhere I've been today, there's always been something wrong. Too young, too old, too short, too tall. Whatever the exception is, I can fix it. I can be older. I can be taller. I can be anything.
can you be a minority woman?
Not wanting to upset his mother, he tells her that everything is fine. Supposedly, he's typing away in a polished office, and gorgeous girls in tight skirts are walking around in front of him. All that's left is to choose one. But while he's telling his mom what a beautiful and pleasant city this is, right in front of his eyes, a couple of criminals walks into a store, and just a few seconds later, the cashier is begging for help outside. The police show up instantly and get into a shootout with the bandits, but Brantley, wanting to keep only good impressions in his mother's mind, decides to lie and say it's just the TV. And he keeps the conversation going all the way until the police finally gun the criminals down. Success stories, as rich people often tell them, begin with a stale slice of pizza and a cheap bottle of soda. So, little Brantley remembers the moment he was about to leave home, enjoying his last days with his parents. He promised them he'd return on his own plane, and for him, there was no turning back. His mom gave him the contact of Uncle Howard, a very distant uncle, to put it mildly.
Cousin Ellen married his half-sister's nephew before she got bit by that dog and died. But he's still kin, and kin is kin.
And the next day, Brantley became a witness to the real rat race of the world he'd dreamt of diving into the world even our small-town boy wanted to conquer. The secretary was extremely surprised that he showed up without an appointment with Mr. Prescott. But once she heard he was the boss's nephew, she immediately offered to let him wait until the meeting ended so she could try squeezing him into Mr. Prescott's insanely packed schedule. Seeing a real scanner right in front of him, Brantley couldn't resist the urge to scan his face and hand it to the secretary so she could present him to Mr. Prescott as, basically, his business card. And while the company owner was yelling in his office plankton suddenly started rushing out, furious that with that level of rage, he might blow a blood vessel any second, though honestly they figured that'd be the best possible outcome. The businessman finally lets his nephew in and gives him only 2 minutes to talk, so Brantley immediately says he's fired up to work in the company, and whatever experience he lacks, he'll earn through pure ambition. He even asks the big boss to imagine himself in his younger days, when he was getting rejected from every job for supposedly having not enough experience. So, Brantley insists he deserves a chance, and taking on huge expectations, he promises to do everything he can to work in his company. And with that kind of pressure, the boss congratulates him for at least making it through the door. He's heading out to another meeting now, and Brantley should call HR. He'll put in a word for him.
Congratulations. He really must have taken a shine to you.
That little conversation gives our guy a wild thirst, and that's when he runs into a stunning bombshell who instantly steals his heart. But she doesn't make him go full chase the first skirt he sees. Instead, she makes him rethink how beautiful his life might get from this moment on. And eventually, he goes to meet his new boss at the post office, Mr. Donald, who wants absolutely nothing to do with a newbie, especially a newbie named Brantley. So the very first step in this department is simple. He's ordered to take off his dumb tie and obey his mentor named Fred. After spending one day with him, Brantley figures out a lot. Fred works for 30 minutes. But on paper, it's a full 2 hours, which means the other hour and a half he's basically chilling. At the post office, You don't just fail to get promoted, you don't even get fired. And even though Brantley knows they're all just regular people, Fred tells him not to greet the suits, as they call the ones who've completely drowned in paperwork. Their job is very important. They've just entered the downsizing department. Some poor guy was fired last Friday, at least according to the Mail, and he's only finding out about it now. And against the rules, Brantley decides to look through the letters drifting around these halls. Pretty quickly, he realizes the whole thing is absolute nonsense, and fired up by this little investigation, he walks out of the building with internal memos and starts reading them right on the street. The chain of command is totally insane. 2 people in a department with a fancy name do the exact same job and do it absolutely terribly. The ambitious, frustrated guy suddenly lucks out and gets his hands on an entire archive of data, and he tries to squeeze every drop of info out of it in one night. But even that grind can't distract him from the brightest feeling of all: love. Love for that same long-legged bombshell, basically a human Rolls-Royce. Fred tells him her name is Christy Wills. A big deal in the finance department, Harvard, and all that. And someone like him shouldn't even dream about her. But Brantley couldn't care less. A bit later, Mr. Donald is forced to send someone to handle a task for the wife of one of the suits, and the lucky pick turns out to be Brantley. Being a natural empath, he decides to find out why she's so upset instead of just silently dealing with her bad mood. The woman tells the young driver that her husband is cheating on her with his secretary. She just hasn't caught him in the act yet. What hurts most is that he doesn't appreciate her effort or the beauty she works so hard to maintain. And today, that beauty is noticed by Brantley himself, and he's not shy about telling her. The lady instantly realizes the opportunity and tries to pull herself together, openly flirting with the young driver to feel young and wanted again. And when they finally reach her home, she outright invites him inside, hands him a drink, and fills him with hope for, let's call it, mutual success. She immediately clocks out his shift with a full check and invites him to swim in her pool, since her husband clearly doesn't appreciate her for who she is. Once they get in the water, the lady decides that's not enough. She starts taking off, not just the guy's clothes, but her own as well, letting their little fun slide to the next level. That level ends up costing them their precious time, because right then her husband shows up and he turns out to be Uncle Prescott himself. Panicking hard, Brantley grabs whatever clothes were ripped off him on the way and bolts through the back door, where he runs straight into their guard dog. He barely manages to escape with his pants still intact.
What are you doing in here?
Feeling romantic?
Oh. What's for dinner?
Oh, Howard. You really know how to sweep a girl back onto her feet.
Man, what happened to you?
Well, it was chased by a 200-pound dog with a mouth as big as my head. And that was the best thing that happened last night.
What was the worst thing?
Got laid.
Not sure you got your priorities straight, Brantley.
When Brantley ends up near the office where an employee was fired not long ago, he can't resist the urge to try out the feeling himself, like he's got his own office and can handle serious issues. And, as if on cue, his phone suddenly rings with a call from another department. Meanwhile, the department heads are doing rooftop jogging sessions while ranting about the company's falling stock prices. Someone's buying up their shares in bulk, which means a hostile takeover is brewing. To stop that, they need to bump the stock price fast by cutting expenses and boosting capital. Brantley, way too deep into his little role play by now, casually tosses in his own solution. Remind the delivery service that the company actually values its clients, and if something goes wrong, the best move is to threaten to end the partnership altogether. The next day, Brantley doesn't show up at the mailroom. He goes straight to the real office of the suits, leaving Fred waiting for a colleague who's not coming. Brantley reaches his floor, where Mr. Prescott also happens to drop by, so Brantley jumps into the first door he sees. And of course, inside is Christy Wills, the girl he's head over heels for. But impressing her with this circus act? Yeah, that doesn't happen. He just makes himself look like an idiot again. Back in his office, he quickly calls the department to finally get a secretary assigned to him. For a whole week, he's been going through his papers and making calls himself, and with his schedule that's draining as hell. And now it's time for him to change clothes and get back to his real job delivering mail around the office. Though he's not wasting the opportunity, he sends fake requests for a secretary and a nameplate for his office, using someone else's name. Mr. Donald catches him showing up late, but Brantley insists he's basically done already, which only makes the boss even more suspicious. Not that Brantley cares. Right while he's changing clothes, the new secretary, Jean, walks in on him. He doesn't panic though, and pretty quickly shifts part of his workload onto her. After that, he finally gets his shiny nameplate and heads out to soak up the atmosphere of the life he's been dreaming about for years. And only then can he get back to trying to snag at least some attention from Christy Wills. But that plan crashes instantly when the department boss calls an emergency meeting and immediately notices the new guy nobody ever told him about. The meeting is all about Mr. Prescott's order to cut costs, raise capital, and stop the chain of hostile takeover attempts. Davenport has already bought 5% of their shares, and if he reaches his goal, the department will face massive layoffs. Christy doesn't waste time and suggests shutting down distribution centers in small towns, which would save a ton of money. But Brantley jumps in, totally disagreeing with her idea, arguing that Mr. Prescott didn't factor in everything. To gain momentum, they shouldn't shrink. They should expand and take over more territory. There's even a guy at the table who shares the same point of view. He wrote that in his report, which he never signed. So when Brantley quotes it, the guy is shocked. Brantley quickly spins some smooth talk to cover himself up, but even that doesn't lead to any real solution. The boss still isn't trusting some rookie expert, which means dodging Prescott's order isn't happening today. Brantley goes back to his actual job, and the boss already senses something is seriously off. He's not taking his eyes off him anymore. Brantley ends up finishing the work at home, but his passionate neighbors make it impossible to focus on anything. So instead of working, he cracks open a beer and listens to their romantic symphony, which keeps going even after he finally lies down to get some sleep. And the surprises didn't stop there. Mrs. Prescott rang the doorbell. She'd somehow tracked down his address and decided to visit her young lover, while her husband was off spending time with Christy Wills, who in turn was spilling to him about a suspicious newbie. Apparently, this newcomer had expressed disagreement with her plans, so the company boss had asked her to spy on any potential sneakiness from their competitor. Brantley has so little time that he slows down the elevator and changes clothes right inside. After slicing up tasks for Jean, he immediately heads back to his work. But when the elevator stalls this time, a supervisor shows up, and Brantley has to think fast.
Hi, Jean. You take those to the cleaners?
Meanwhile, Christy takes the chance to sneak into Brantley's office to grab some papers. After handing them over to Prescott, she declares she won't spy anymore. The next meeting kicks off with arguments, and then Brantley shows up in his own freestyle flair, testing out pants from the new collection. Now, they're supposed to dive into the info about department closures, just like Christy planned, but everything's interrupted by Mr. Prescott himself, who's super curious to see the newbie bold enough to challenge his plans. Only suddenly, the newbie feels sick, and the boss doesn't get a chance to follow because he's locked himself inside the first storage room he finds. And in there, a couple is passionately busy making out, completely oblivious to the third person present. The guy works late into the night, and Christy witnesses his workaholic streak, which is rough on her too. They spend the whole evening arguing over company strategies, so intensely that Christy even ends up bleeding. Afterwards, they head out for dinner together, where a waitress overhears their conversation and tells them that in life, you just have to keep expanding. That positive mindset helps you live better, she says, and by the way, they look amazing together, so maybe they should just become a couple. Even though it was supposed to be a business meeting, Brantley doesn't miss the chance to plant a little hope in the girl that maybe, just maybe, something could actually happen between them. They meet the next day, and Brantley tells her that he actually bought a ticket home, just like his dad ordered. He had thought about selling it to make some cash, but he keeps it as a symbol. If he uses it, it means New York has won. But that's not happening anytime soon, so he's determined to get what he wants. Though, for now, they'll have to tone down the emotions until they reach their shared goal. The couple takes a ferry ride, and the conversation turns to Brantley asking about his competition. The girl immediately spills that the guy she liked turned out to be married and had been lying to her for a long time, so she changed her plans. And with those changes, Brantley felt it was time to step in. He gives this workaholic girl the most passionate kiss of her life, followed by their first truly happy night together. The next day, Prescott is furious that his lover vanished over the weekend. Soon, she admits to him that their relationship is over and they can't be together anymore. The man quickly decides to act. He shows up at her office to announce he's ready to divorce his wife just to be with her again. Even at the dinner table, he goes so far as to invite her to a business meeting with partners at his house the next weekend. And yet, he's dying to know who she spent the weekend with, and it turns out to be Carlton Whitfield, who, as it happens, will later turn out to be his nephew Brantley, and his boss still hasn't let him rest, running between floors and hiding what he's really up to. In front of Christy, he's all business suit and small talk, asking why she looks so down today when suddenly his boss shows up and starts chasing Brantley. But his partner Fred steps in, sending the boss flying down with the janitors, giving Brantley yet another chance. Brantley rushes to his office, only to find Prescott there, examining documents from some mysterious employee he's never even seen. Brantley, standing there in a suit, excuses himself by saying he just ran from his best friend's funeral and will change soon. He's seen Carlton Whitfield a few times before it's just Prescott's unlucky timing. Prescott asks him to take the folder to his office. He'll be there in a minute. Brantley does as told. But in the boss's office, Prescott's wife shows up and immediately pounces on him with full-on lust. Right at the worst possible moment, Prescott shows up and they stage a scene. Brantley feels sick, and his aunt rushes to help him. Seizing the chance, she asks her husband to invite his nephew to a party so the young talent can have some fun too. Right now, she wants to have lunch with him to find out how his parents are doing. Soon, the boss calls Brantley in for a serious talk, not about his wife, but about his progress in the mail department, which he's been closely watching. During their man-to-man chat, Prescott mentions that Brantley really impressed his wife, and that this should be used wisely. But he also reminds him that men are allowed to be with several women at once, so while the blood is hot, it's okay to take advantage. Aunt Vera, of course, greets him with fiery kisses, just as Prescott planned, but it's not just for fun. Today, she's got the idea to introduce Brantley to a couple of wealthy men who could really help him. Meanwhile, Prescott tries to drag Christy into bed, but she slips away and bumps into Brantley. Still, it's not time for play. She's got a roundtable meeting with the company, so Brantley, with Vera, heads to meet the new business partners. Thanks to his charisma and burning drive, the men start trusting him and agreeing with all his ideas. Prescott, tired of hanging around the businessmen, goes to find his muse. When he hears she's with Whitfield, he flies into a rage and heads to the pool, only to find her nephew there instead. He pulls Brantley aside and orders him to keep Carlton Whitfield away from Christy, and Brantley promises to do it, swearing on his honor. And by nighttime, the real chaos kicks off. Prescott dashes out of bed to Christy. Brantley's heading to the same girl, and Vera's all fired up, planning to visit her own love. The hallways turn into a full-on mess. Brantley sneaks into Christy's room, but she's not there. He finds the documents she swiped from his desk, and just as the door starts opening from the other side, he jumps into bed. Prescott joins him, then Christy arrives, followed by Vera. So the drama unfolds right before our eyes. Both sides of Brantley's personality come out, while Vera insists Christy's just a lightweight who managed to seduce two of her men perfect timing to call a lawyer and prep for a divorce. When Brantley and Christy are finally alone, he tells her she's got a bright future ahead, hopping from bed to bed in the name of so-called business. In the end, Brantley gets fired. His secretary, Jean, is annoyed that he's not a manager. Even though she loved working with him, he was an awesome boss. Christy gets fired too, and they leave the office together, throwing loud arguments back and forth. But as soon as the elevator doors close, passion takes over, and the suits on the first floor are told to wait outside. Right there, they hatch a brilliant plan. They rush back to the office and call in Jean and Fred for backup. The plan is actually pretty cunning. During a merger meeting for the benefit of investors, Brantley and Christy crash in and declare that the company's problem isn't money, it's the people running it. Using his new friends, Brantley manages to acquire 5% of the company, but the main investor is his wife, Vera, who all this time held the majority stake, just letting Prescott handle day-to-day management. Now it's time for him to leave his chair he's fired. And he can even take his assistant with him, since the seat will now go to Vera's new colleagues she's putting at the top of her company. Brantley and Christy become the new bosses. And Vera finds a new man in Fred, who satisfies all her needs. And with that beautiful ending, the movie wraps up.